Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor. Today I'm away from the studio. I'm actually in front of a room full of patriots pouring into people who are ready to fight for faith, family, and freedom in their own communities. It's one of my favorite things I love to do, but I cannot let the day go by without walking with you too. So ahead of time, I sat down and recorded this conversation just for moments like this. I'd love for you to share one concrete thing that you're doing to push back and build something beautiful right where you are. This is part of a movement, and it needs your voice in it.
I'm going to teach you a word, and this word's going to connect those two concepts. And it's a word called paideia. Anyone ever hear that word? You don't get to raise your hand. Paideia. It's an ancient Greek word. It actually means child. So when you take your kids to the doctor, it's called a pediatrician, or your major in pediatrics, right? So it's the same word, paideia. As a matter of fact, if you talk to somebody who knows Greek and they're talking about their child, they'll talk about their paideia. Okay, so it's still used today for child, but in the ancient world, it eventually developed a richer meaning, a deeper meaning of the Latin word cultura, which of course is culture. So paideia described the beliefs, the symbols, the values, the civilization that you wanted to pass down to the next generation. That's the idea of paideia. And so when they thought about education, they thought of an enterprise and a project that was radically cultural. That when we educate our kids, we're not just imparting a bunch of information to them. We're actually forming within them a particular way of being human. And what's really neat, if you go to the New Testament, you go to Ephesians chapter 6, Paul instructs fathers to raise their children. You probably see that the translation is often in the fear and the admonition of the Lord. Are you all familiar with that passage? Right. Well, if you go to the Greek, it's actually paideia tu Kyriou, the paideia of the Lord. Paul wants parents to raise their children in a distinctively Christian enculturation. It's very profound stuff. And so whether they were Jewish, Roman, Greek, it didn't matter. They were expected to transform their cultures into unique paideutic expressions of the Christian gospel. So that's key here. The ancient Greek term for education just entailed this inextricable link between education and culture. So you can literally think of education as enculturation. It's not a matter of simply imparting information. It's not a matter simply of prepping for SATs. That's all fine. That's great, but it's deeper than that. If you don't have a very deliberate and intentional enculturation in your classrooms, somebody else is going to come in and bring it in. Does that make sense? Now, the culture that they wanted to enculturate children in was made up of this amazing complex known as the polis, right, or the city-state. And this is really cool because we can dig deeper here in terms of these profound significances. Who knows the Greek word, the original New Testament word for church? If you're Spanish speaking, you know it. Ecclesia, right? And you could break it down. So our word church comes from the Greek Kyriaki. And Kyriaki literally means the Lord's Day. And it got Anglicanized with the Gaelic, I guess, in Carrick. And then Carrick becomes church, right? And that's fine, right? But the actual original church, ecclesia, it broke down into ek, like exit, and klesia is like kaleo. It literally means to call. So we use the same word today, kaleo, call, right? And ek, exit. So to call out people. So the church are the called out ones. right? Which is really cool because if you think it through, the ancient Hebrews, right, are known as the Semites, and that goes back to the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Hear, O Israel, Shema, right? The called ones, ecclesia. But in the ancient world, ecclesia was not a term for like religious gatherings. So if I said you want to come to the ecclesia, you wouldn't be thinking about, I'm going to a prayer meeting. You would actually be thinking, we're going to go to something more akin to a political gathering.
I know you keep telling yourself at some point in the future you're going to buy and store away a few dozen gallons of water just in case an emergency hits your family and the water shuts off. We've all experienced it. The storm hits, the faucet stops working, and we're left wondering how long it's going to be before we have drinking water again. Every time it happens, we kick ourselves for not being more prepared. Well, here's an easy step that you can take that costs less than a dinner out. It's called the Pure Water Straw, and it can clean an entire year of water for you. It's absolutely amazing. It's the perfect emergency tool for making sure your family always has clean water through a disaster. So I got a little bit of some dirty water here, as it were. And what you do is you just take it out and you take the top off. And then what you can do is you can drink from any water source, no matter how dirty. Check this out. I'm kidding. I kid you not. It tastes just like water. This is coffee, obviously. I don't taste the coffee. It's just water. I mean, this is amazing. The Pure Water Straw allows you to drink from literally any water source, from the pond, from the mud puddle, the bucket that caught the rainwater. Even, I kid you not, even the toilet. The Pure Water Straw instantly cleans out bacteria, pathogens, and debris and purifies the water. So you can drink clean water from any source without worrying about puking your guts out. We have these in our home. We got them in our cars. We've got them in our go bags. Or emergency responders actually recommend having one of these on hand for every member of your household. They store well in their sealed bag. It's a tool your family would be able to count on for years to come. Now, if a takeout meal is more important than a year of clean water for your family, well, then obviously the Pure Water Straw isn't for you. But if you know how important clean water is, and understand how quickly a disaster can change everything, then getting a few of these Pure Water Straws is a no-brainer. It's the most logical next step, both for your peace of mind, but also from an investment price standpoint, because normally these are $45 each, but today the makers, Sierra Madre, need to make some space in their Wisconsin warehouse, and so they're marking these guys down over 60% with free shipping to boot. Click the link in the description below and grab yours today so your family's ready for the next crisis or disaster. You won't regret it. Click on that link below right now.
The ecclesia was actually the epicenter of the polis, the Greek city-state. And those Greek city-states were everywhere. Rome was a city-state. Jerusalem was a city-state. Alexandria, Egypt was a city-state. They were everywhere, right? The government, what we might think of as, say, town hall, was what's called the ecclesia, the called out ones. And these are the adult citizen males who had ultimate decision-making authority in any particular polis. And so paideia had this very profound sense that this is the way we're going to form our future called out ones. This is the way we're going to shape and mold our future leaders. It's in our paideia. The paideia is for creating those called out in the ecclesia. Now, if you put it all together, Paul is telling fathers, raise your children in the ecclesia to theou. I'm sorry, in the paideia to theou. He's calling everybody who belongs to these gatherings members of the ecclesia. That sounds so political. Well, that's right, because you're part of the New Jerusalem. You belong to the true and everlasting city. So hence Augustine's great work is called the Civitas Dei, the city of God, namely the church, the people of God who ultimately manifests the kingdom of God. And so paideia was this educational project whereby members of the ecclesia were cultivated. So paideia for the ancient Greeks, the Romans, the Christians was a distinctively political educational project. They had a very specific understanding of what that meant. And they recognized that if you want a flourishing civic life, you had to cultivate a flourishing soul. Because they saw the soul as a microcosm of the city. Plato's, if you've ever read Plato's Republic, which is actually the model for Augustine's City of God, which he wrote several centuries later. But in his Republic, he gives the ideal order of a society, but said, of course, this can't work unless the soul is first ordered. And so the blueprint for the society becomes a blueprint for the soul, the intellectual, the moral, the aesthetic capacities of the human person. And amazingly, our founding fathers had a very similar view for our country. Os Guinness, the sociologist, calls it the golden triangle of freedom. This is really cool. All our founding fathers, this is Guinness's argument, all our founding fathers held this. If you wanted to find one common belief that they all held, that they did not debate, it was this. If you wanted to be truly free, you had to be virtuous, because only a virtuous people could self-govern. If you want to be truly free, you got to be virtuous. But if you want to be virtuous, you got to have a faith tradition. There's no way around that. Because faith traditions, particularly Christianity, are the eternal sources of civic virtue. But if you want real faith, you got to be free, because coerced faith is not true faith. But if you want to be free, you got to be virtuous, which requires faith, which requires freedom, which requires virtue, which requires... So this is what's known as this interlocking, interdependent triangle of freedom. If you want freedom, you've got to have virtue, which requires faith, which requires freedom. So they are all self-reinforcing. So that's our founding fathers' conception of this very principle. The cultivation of virtue in paideia was considered an essential element for a flourishing polis, a flourishing society. That's the interconnection between politics and education. And this paideutic connection, that civic virtue, comes ultimately from a virtue-centered education, defined our educational project for 2,500 years in the West. Now, for me, a lot of this kind of came home in one of the coolest moments of the whole Trump presidency. And that is when J.D. Vance brought up this whole notion of ordered loves. Does anybody remember this? Yeah. Okay. And he dug down on it. He got some pushback because liberals know how devastating this is to their project, this very talk I'm giving you. If we recover these frames of reference, liberationist activism is gone. So he got into this whole thing of ordered loves. He was in an interview with Sean Hannity, and he was talking about the issue of immigration. And he explained that the Trump administration's policy on border security was rooted in this very definition of civic virtue. And he defined it in terms of what he called the very Christian concept of ordered loves. True virtue is fundamentally about learning how to love rightly.
Before you go, if you're not in the Courageous Patriots Club yet, you're missing our weekly deep dives, Monday night Q&A, and a community of patriots who actually think. Link below. Come join us.